Hello and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, where we help dads navigate through divorce and help them to create a healthier and less traumatic divorce process. My name is Jude Sandoval and I am your host. Thanks for being here today. A couple of things before we get started on my topic for today, which I'm a little bit worked up about, but I think it's important information and something that needs to be shared with you and something to watch out for as you go through the court process and go through this process with attorneys and family law, as well as your soon to be ex. But we'll get to that in a second. I wanted to first mention that the course that I had been mentioning, and all of you that reached out and gave some research and feedback to us and to me on, is all set and ready to launch. We are going to be doing that on Sunday, May 9th. The course is Dad's Divorce Blueprint. So if you are looking to create a healthier and less traumatic process through divorce for yourself and your children, this is the course for you. It is based upon a system that has been around for decades that I have worked on and have incorporated into this course. It has statistical research that shows how it can be effective and how many of the thousands of people that it has already helped to go through the divorce process. So I'm incredibly excited. If you would like more information on it, the website is dadsdivorceblueprint.com. There's some info there. And then if you hang on through the end of the podcast today, I'll have a special offer for you on that. This I'm just going to briefly go through this with you, what the course entails. It's six live group coaching sessions that's going to help you rebuild your life one step at a time and move forward. You're going to get access to the recordings of the presentations in case you aren't able to make one of the live sessions, but this is community-based. There's going to be other men that are involved, so I highly recommend that you show up for each and every one of those six. Lifetime access to the Dad's Divorce Blueprint Facebook support group. So there's a dedicated Facebook page, and yes, I'm back on Facebook. Much to my reluctance, but this is going to help with community and reaching out and being able to provide some support through this group and the group coaching sessions. So on that note, if you haven't visited the Divorced Advocate Facebook page, please do. Please like it. Get involved with it. It will help us reach some more men. Priority access to the weekly private Divorce Dads meeting. So our every other Saturday meeting is now full. I'm going to be adding either a weekday meeting in the evenings or another Saturday meeting. I haven't figured out quite yet, but those are getting full, and I encourage you in the meeting notes below to check that out. We've been having some great discussions, and it's just men supporting men and talking about their process and helping each other figure out and support each other through their divorces. And lastly, a private 1 hour one-on-one coaching session with me where we can talk about whatever issues you might have going on. You can take advantage of that up front or at the end of the 6 weeks of group coaching, whenever you'd like. So, the goal is by the end of this, you're going to have a crystal clear vision for your life after divorce, or during and after divorce. You're going to uncover any hidden challenges that might be sabotaging you, and then leave feeling renewed, re-energized, and inspired to create your amazing life. Now, I will warn you that this is not going to be a class for anybody that is looking for a hack through the divorce process. There is not one. This requires work. So if you're looking to create a healthier, less traumatic experience for yourself and your children, and you're looking at gathering up the pieces and rebuilding yourself from the ground up, then this is the course for you. So check out dadsdivorceblueprint.com, and at the end of the show, I'll have a little special for you as well. Also, YouTube page. I know I'm back into the social media thing to my reluctance, but I'm finding this is the best way that we're getting some reach out to more and more men and connecting with more and more men. Very close to having enough subscribers in order to do some branding stuff, which is, if you don't know it, YouTube is like the top 1 or 2 ways in which you can get your brand out there, because it's the most searched on Google and the results come up. So if I can start creating some branding on that, I think we're at 60 some subscribers. I need to hit over 100, and then we can start doing some branding, which is going to really help make things explode. I'm working with a group that's helping me design and figure all of this out. I can't tell you how much I'm learning. It's like being back in school again. It's unbelievable, but it's going to help so many people. So if you could do me a favor, if you could just get on that on YouTube, even if you don't like doing that in social media like I don't, it will help immensely, and it's going to help a ton of other men. So thank you. Thanks for all the support. I appreciate that. And so now our topic today. So this topic got me a little worked up, and I took a couple days just to process this, because I saw in my LinkedIn feed, which is why I stay off of social media mostly, except for LinkedIn. But this showed up on LinkedIn, which was, I thought, kind of interesting. But it was an article that was titled "High Conflict Divorce Approaches Are Sexist and Gender-Based." So naturally, the work that I do, that caught my attention. And I saw that this had a bunch of likes and comments, etc., mostly around, it's about time. Oh, this is great, blah, blah, blah. Now, that even caught my attention even more. So I had to dive into this. I clicked on it, right? I bid, clickbait, I bid on it. And this was an article that was written by a quote unquote researcher for a campaign called the Stop Abuse Campaign. Now, I think we can all agree that any kind of abuse, mental, emotional, physical, period, is not a good thing, a positive, and we don't want men or women or children or anybody being abused. So we'll just say that for period. So stopping any abuse is a good thing. The challenge is this article is in itself sexist and biased, and I'm gonna go through it here. So the author starts out with basically making the comment that any stereotypes, period, are not a positive thing. However, he makes the leap immediately that says, when will we show similar concerns about stereotypes used to denigrate and harm women? So I'm not exactly sure what reality he's living in, but I don't know that I see that anymore. If anything, it might be floating in, not even floating, but moving has moved and is continuing to move very far in the other direction. But then his next paragraph is his premise and of the entire article, and that is, family courts routinely use the quote unquote high conflict approach that is based on the stereotypes of the vindictive woman and the nagging wife. This approach encourages courts to assume that protective mothers report the father's abuse out of anger at their partner rather than to protect their children. Now, this statement is made with absolutely no background information, no statistical studies, no anything other than his subjective opinion. And the author is a family law attorney, so maybe that is his reality, but putting something out there under the guise of Stop Abuse Campaign, I would hope would have some statistical analysis behind what this assertion is. He goes on to state, this biased approach puts protective mothers at a huge disadvantage, but there has been little discussion about the sexist nature of this approach. The problem with using the high conflict approach is that it gives abusers an unfair advantage and helps distort reality for the courts. Now he's making a leap. So now he's making a leap that the sexism then is leading with with an advantage towards abusers. Now, wait, it's going to get even better. At the start of the litigation, the false assumptions, and by better, I don't mean actually better. The false assumptions lead courts to risky temporary orders that bias the case and silence the children. There is then extreme prejudice and bias to continue the temporary decisions made without the benefit of evidence or research. So again, no documentation around any of this other than his speculation or maybe his quote unquote lived reality, right? But he's laying groundwork here because we're going to see exactly what the premise of these first 3 paragraphs is leading to. So he goes on to describe what are high conflict approaches, and high conflict divorce is something that happens probably in, I think the statistics are 5% or less of divorces out there. Now, I know that my quote unquote lived reality is that I hear about a lot of those because I have a lot of you that tune in that are going through this. And it is not only challenging if it is absolutely the best process that you can possibly go through. And when I say best process, that it's the most amicable and you are self-aware and your future ex or your ex was self-aware and has taken the time to go through this and put the children first, and there's no mental illness and there's no challenges and everything. It is still incredibly difficult and challenging. And these 5% are the ones that go to court, that go through temporaries, that go all the way to trial. And it's only, and a lot of you listening might be surprised, and I was a little bit surprised too, because mine has and continues to be high conflict, that only about 5% or less of divorces are these high conflict that go all the way through court. 95% of them, 95% of divorces are settled amicably. So that is actually a good thing. And that's a thing to be championing and touting, because that means that 95% of couples are mature enough to be able to go through this process, put the children first, and figure out an amicable way to go through that. But the ones that get written about and the stories that get told and the ones that end up on TV are the ones that are the smallest percentages, but the most sensational. So he goes on to describe what are high conflict approaches, and he describes these as approaches that assume that the case involves 2 safe and loving parents who want what is best for their children, just need to get over their anger related to the end of the relationship. So then he makes another leap there, that there's anger, and that's the reason why this is a high conflict approach, or there is high conflict. The response is designed to help parents learn to communicate and cooperate so they can have a successful co-parenting relationship. And then he says the reality is very different, which I would agree with him on that point. Co-parenting has some merit in the large majority of cases that are destined to reach an amicable settlement. Contested custody cases involve very different types of parents. And then he makes a claim that I have not been able to find any statistical support for, and he does not statistically support this. Between 75 and 90% of contested cases involve domestic violence and really the most dangerous abusers. So I haven't found any evidence supporting this, but now wait for it, because this is where he makes the big leap that you need to be concerned about. I need to be concerned about, and every man that might be listening to this that is not divorced, or somebody is listening to it and has a friend that's getting married, needs to pay attention to and understand. These are men, is his next sentence. These are men who believe she has no right to leave, and so they feel entitled to use whatever tactics are needed to regain what he believes is his right to control his partner and punish her for leaving. This is why so many of these cases involve the death of mothers and children's lives that abusers ruin. So he just made that huge leap that these contested cases are abusers that are men, which at this point is absolutely ridiculous. And so his next, and I'm going to get into refuting this, and I'm not going to go into real specific detail. We don't have the time here, but there is statistical support that absolutely refutes that men are the only one abusing, that men are the only one that are high conflict, that men are the only one that are angry, that men, all of this ridiculousness around fathers and how they should not be involved and the men are the problem is absolutely wrong. And that's what I want you to be aware of, that there is this bias in the court system, in the family law system, et cetera. So, and I'm going to demonstrate this now, because his next sentence is, high conflict approaches assume that mothers' reports of domestic violence or child abuse are false or exaggerated. Now, last time I checked, that reports of domestic violence actually had to be documented with law enforcement, actually had to be supported with some sort of documentation, and it actually had to go to the courts to be tried. So the innocence until proven guilty philosophy is not working in this particular article or with this assumption. Now he goes on to reference something called the Bala study. The Bala study tells us that deliberate false reports by mothers in contested custody occur less than 2% of the time. This Bala study that he is referencing is a study that is over 20 years old. And it's not even a study, it is a discussion paper produced out of Canada that then referenced a study that was 25 years old to use this 2% of the time assertion. So it's complete crap to start. And mothers are far more likely to minimize the father's abuse, he goes on. The mistaken attempts lead mothers, attorneys, and other court professionals to discourage reporting abuse. Now, if that is not an outmoded statement, I don't know what is. Because listen, if you've been living under a rock, maybe that makes sense, but I don't know about you, Me Too and everything else. That's absolutely asinine. This results in denying courts the information they need to protect children. Okay, more sensationalism. Scanning down here, a couple paragraphs further. So I just want to say, there are now reports, research that shows this, and I just stated it, that this is not in fact true. This premise and this idea that men are the only ones that are mentally, emotionally, physically abusive in a relationship or in relationships in general, whether they're marriages or non-marriages, living together, is absolutely been refuted. And so this premise, the premise of all of this, is absolute crap. So you need to know that working off that premise is not true. However, courts and attorneys like this individual who are now working behind the scenes for a nonprofit that's quote unquote Stop Abusers campaign are still proselytizing and purporting this false narrative. You need to be aware of that. You need to be aware of that when you're in court. You need to be aware of that period in life and in anybody that you're involved with. But if you're going through the divorce process, know that that is a narrative that still continues to be out there. And this article, written just 6 days ago, is perpetuating that. And that's why this got me so worked up. And I wanted to bring this to your attention, because I know I hear all the time from men that are going, wow, this is biased, or, oh, my ex is acting in such a bad manner. And why is it that she's not being held to the same standards in family court or by anybody else that I am or have been? This makes absolutely no sense. So just be aware. So he goes on to say most of the mothers are the primary attachment figures for their children. Again, this is more crap, because the attachment theory that has been studied for decades only makes that such assumption for children up to 9 months old. After 9 months old, then children start to create attachments to primary, secondary, and other caregivers. And further research shows that, and statistics show that fathers have, in these bonds and these attachments to fathers, have equally, if not a more profound impact on the children. So he's not citing anything that supports this. He's just making the assertion that mothers are the primary attachment figures for their children. And then he says, this means that children need their mothers more than their fathers. And there it is. That is the statement that you need to be aware of, and you need to keep fighting for and against during your divorce, because that is absolutely, positively a load of crap. And now we have all of the statistic, we have all the analysis, we have all of the research that shows that that is absolutely not true. So then he goes on to say, but the courts are creating a false equivalency. And this is where you're at. This is where you're at. Fighting against this quote unquote false equivalency that you should not have 50-50 time. You should not have as much time in your children's lives as the mother should. Don't believe it. It is not true. So he goes on and he states some more stuff, that mothers are attempting to protect their children just as any good parent would, and that it's an obstacle to a co-parenting arrangement the court's promoting because it's not protecting the kids. And then that women are misunderstood because they're protecting, and the courts won't cooperate, and the abuser, men, because men are the only abusers, right? In order to stay in the children's lives, but must accept the children will witness more abuse, and then therefore will have shorter lives and a lifetime of health and social problems. So, he's not only stopping that mothers are the primary attachment, and they have a more important part of their lives, but that involvement of fathers, because in fathers being men who are abusive, then are going to shorten their kids' lifetimes of health, or they'll have shorter lives and a lifetime of health and social problems. But actually, the statistical evidence shows that it's the opposite. Fathers who are more involved have children that are happier, they do better in school, they're better able to pair bond and have healthy relationships, they live longer, they have a better standard of living and life, they make more money in life. The statistics go on and on and on. Now, he does cite something that I think is important, and I think this is important also to bring up for you to be aware of as well. It's called ACE, and these are called adverse childhood experiences. And he says the research informs us that contested custody is often the last chance to save children from a lifetime of misery and from these adverse childhood experiences. So let me just talk briefly about what these ACEs are. And this is an important thing. And I think it is an important thing. And I do appreciate that he brings this up, not in the context in which he did, because he's utilizing it to try to diminish men and try to sway his narrative here. But these adverse childhood experiences strongly predict scores of mental and medical conditions in adulthood. And so these adverse childhood experiences include physical, sexual, emotional abuse, emotional and physical neglect, or living in a home where there is violence, mental illness, or suicide, or loss of parent. And ACEs lead to conditions ranging from depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, suicidality, that's hard to say, and drug abuse, to autoimmune disorders, obesity, diabetes, chronic pain, and even cancer in the heart disease. ACEs may well be called the #1 unaddressed public health problem because of the suffering they cause. Now, I would 100%, and I've taken that from different information, and it's actually an article called "The Hidden Wounds from Adverse Childhood Experiences," and you can find that. I'll link all of these articles in the show notes, and you can look these up and read these. Now, these ACEs are important things, and these are important, and these ACEs are important. Why it is critical for you to fight for your children in court, particularly if you think that there is a problem or a challenge on the other side, on the other, you're with your co-parent, that there are potential mental and emotional issues that are not being addressed, because these are the mental and emotional issues that are going to lead to big problems in their adult life. Now, if you've done the work, if we've done the work, we know that we may have experienced some of uh, um, these adverse childhood experiences, which have created adaptive behaviors ourselves, which may have and probably have led to the demise of our relationship and our divorce. So, like, if you've done the work and if you've listened to all the podcasts before and all the therapists that we may have talked about and or talked to, and the coaches and the mindset people, these adverse childhood experiences and these adverse behaviors then lead to maladaptive behaviors in our adulthood. So it's incredibly important for you to be aware of these ACEs, these adverse childhood experiences. They are not just caused by men. They are not just caused in divorce, and they're not just caused by physical abuse. It's mental, emotional abuse as well, and that can be perpetrated. It is often perpetrated by women and mothers as well. And these can be I like to call them these soft abuses, the soft abuses of gaslighting, of enmeshment, of doing things, codependency, or acting in a codependent manner, in being aloof and in away from the kids, and abandonments, etc. These are all still mental and emotional abuse on children that happen from, it can be either parent that create these ACEs in the future. So be aware of these too. And this is a good thing to be able to bring up with your attorney, with a child family investigator, with a PRE, a parental responsibility evaluation, as well as therapists. If you are in therapy, or if you have your children in therapy, ACEs are a good one to talk about and bring up so that they can be aware. Now, some of the rest of this article, he's going to bring up some of this stuff. Now, it's biased against men, but I'm going to agree with him on some of this stuff. Now, the next part, the next sentence in this article, he's supporting, in reality, children need their primary attachment figure more than the other parent. It's completely crap. Now, it's not up until age 9 months. After that, they need the other parent equally as much as they need their primary attachment. And so he's just making this up now. This is complete crap. And what made me so angry about this is it's on LinkedIn, right? Business. He's an attorney. He's perpetuating all of this crap. People are on there. Oh, this is great. We need to know this. Stop abusers. Now, he's slowly working in the abusers, but he's also, you feel the undertone of the men are the only ones that are the abusers, and it's complete crap. So he goes on, for obvious reasons, the children have a closer relationship with their primary parent. Not true. Promoting equal parenting means favoring the parent with the weaker relationship so both parents can be involved. Also not true. Courts take this so far that they will threaten mothers and actually award custody to the parent. Children need less. Again, I don't know what reality he's living in. Maybe it's his lived experience as a family law attorney, but there's nothing, absolutely nothing, that supports this assertion. And actually, the statistics show the opposite. So he talks about the ACE research promoting the health and safety of children require forcing the abuser to change their behavior if they want a relationship. So this is a good point. This is a good general point, because it's been my personal experience that unless you fight for your time, fight for your children in order to force the individual that may be an abuser, and again, abusers can be mothers or fathers, that they will not change their behavior unless forced to do so. And I've seen this firsthand in courts. Alcoholism, drug use, whatever it may be, whatever. And so those are some of the topical issues that unless somebody is forced to change their lifestyle to be more beneficial and helpful to the children, that they will not change. So you're fighting for a future, and you're not fighting for the future tomorrow or next week or next month. You're fighting the future of your children in their adult life and being able to have a healthy and happy life going forward forever throughout. So this isn't just a short term, this is a long-term battle. And I know oftentimes it's so difficult and challenging and just exhausting to go through this, but know and understand that it is something for your children that will have an impact and profound a profound impact on them throughout the rest of their life. So keep up the fight if you in your heart know and feel that you need to do it. So many people, and oftentimes I have gotten beaten down so much. It's so hard if you don't have any money left. You're so exhausted after taking care of the kids and work and the depositions and court cases and battles, and then a co-parent that doesn't want to cooperate, and it's making things even more difficult. I feel you. Reach out, get some support in our community groups, talk to us, because we feel and we know your fight. So just keep fighting. Keep fighting is incredibly important. He goes on also to say high conflict approaches refuse to consider the most likely situation. Most contested custody involve abusive fathers who believe she has no right to leave, and so use custody tactics to regain control and punish the mother. More crap. There's absolutely no evidence that he supports, and there's no evidence out there that I can find that this is absolutely true. It is absolutely not true. Excuse me. Okay, I'm talking fast because I'm getting worked up. I'm working up a little lather here. If you're watching on video, you can see it. But so I want to go on. The ACE research tells us it is critical for children exposed to ACEs to receive trauma-informed care to deal with problems as they develop and to reduce the fear and stress abusers cause. So I will agree with this wholeheartedly, and something that you need to be aware of, getting the kids into some sort of therapy, into something where they have an opportunity to talk about these things with a impartial third party that is going to be able to listen and be a safe space and place for the kids to talk about this stuff. Now, he talks about, and this is often the case, if there is abuse, mental and even not physical, just mental and emotional abuse, an abuser may, and oftentimes is not going to want the kids to be in therapy. That is a sign. Pay attention to the sign. Getting kids into therapy, and especially a good therapist, and we should probably do a show on therapists, but one of the questions that I would ask a therapist initially is also how they feel about, this is the one that I'll say, what is your take on toxic masculinity? And unless that answer is, well, there is toxicity everywhere. There can be toxic femininity, there can be toxic masculinity, there can be toxic anything, that you need to find a different therapist. Because if their take is toxic masculinity is a problem, we need to mitigate that. It's a mental health illness, as you know, the AMA, and we talked earlier with Sean Smith about that. There are a lot of narratives going on out there, and there are a lot of therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists that are perpetuating this, and it is also a load of crap. So especially if you've got little boys, we don't want them sitting in therapy being told that their inherent masculine nature is something that's bad and that is toxic, and that there's something wrong with them. So that's a question. What is your take on toxic masculinity? If it's nothing other than there's all kinds of masculinity, or there's all kinds of toxicity, it can run the spectrum, then you need to find a different therapist, because then you're just going to be creating another adverse childhood experience through therapy, which also I've experienced as well, in teaching them that masculinity is bad. And then they grow up with this terrible idea that because they're a boy or a man that they're toxic and that they're bad. So just be aware of that. Addressing the ACEs, having them have a third party where they can express themselves is absolutely critical, but it's also critical that it's in a place that is open and receptive to listening and allowing them to be who they are and say what they need. All right, let's go on here. And I'm going to agree more with most of the rest of this, because what he's talking about now is about the court process and in this philosophy around that it's just a good idea to have 50-50. I've seen and I hear all the time that it's the court getting their docket cleared because it's just much easier to go 50-50. Now, you would think the court would say, well, if the only 5% of these divorces are contested, and they're in of these 5%, these are high conflict, then maybe there's something deeper underneath here that we really need to look at. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen, right? And he shares a little bit about this here. Shared parenting is a controversial issue, he says, but virtually all laws and research agree that shared parenting was not meant for domestic violence cases or cases in which the parents can't communicate or cooperate. And I would wholeheartedly agree with this. Courts like shared parenting because it is viewed as a quick way to resolve cases on a crowded docket. Amen. The research shows it is a temporary reprieve because the cases are likely to reappear. And that's absolutely positively true. I wish there was some research in and around that would show this. Shared parenting was not meant for the kinds of cases courts view as high conflict. I agree with that 100%. He goes on to say the best solution to domestic violence cases is for abusers to change their behavior in order to improve their relationship with children. We talked about this. And then he talks about the harm of the court process and these high contested cases just being passed through. And he says this, he talks about he talks about the ACE research, but he also talks about the Saunders research also, which talks about domestic violence cases. And so I think we'll also all agree that domestic violence cases, now, again, he's making an assumption, he's making a big leap that is really difficult here, that domestic violence is just men, but any domestic violence and any of these ACEs, and the Saunders talks about domestic violence, ACEs talks about mental, the kind of more the soft, I call them soft, they're not soft, but because they're not physical, I call them soft. These soft abuses of mental, emotional abuse that go on that are not being addressed. This is all abuse. This is all abuse. And the physical abuse, and what I've witnessed is that unless there's physical abuse, the courts are not paying attention to these mental and emotional abuses that are going on at all. And there are no studies around who's perpetrating these more or less. So we need more, and he says it in here, that we need more healthcare providers to learn and understand about what this domestic abuse, domestic violence and domestic abuse is, because it's not just physical, it is mental and emotional, and it is perpetrated at a rate on men equally as it is on women, by men and by husbands. And that is and has been now statistically supported. So this whole false narrative is not true. The courts he continues to say, the courts just do not seem to have an effective mechanism for updating practices and integrating important research. And that is absolutely positively true. Now, he supports that with the fact that 58,000 children are sent for custody and unprotected visitation with dangerous abusers who are men, and they die because of men, and fathers who abuse them, and men are all bad. But we know that this isn't true. And he finally says, and I'll agree with this, inertia favors the high conflict approaches, but the research, and I don't agree with his premise about these high conflict approaches. I do agree with him that the courts process these high conflict approaches with just a 50-50 parenting time is great and work it out and figure it out, which is not the right way. But the research proves they are harmful to children, which is absolutely positively true. And I think we see this, right? We've got a generation of kids that are with more and more of the comforts and the higher standards of living than we ever have had in the history of the world, are feeling more suicidal, that are, unfortunately, in Colorado. I'm in Colorado, and we just had another 20-year-old young man that has gone out and done a horrific act of crime, that they're experiencing more and more mental and emotional issues that are not being addressed. And so it would benefit the courts. And now that we've normalized divorce, 50+% of divorces are going to end in divorce, or marriages are going to end in divorce. And so this is going to have an adverse impact on children, and we're not focusing on that in adverse impact. And so he says many court professionals oppose needed reforms because they make a good living using the present practices, which is true. The courts are designed by the attorneys. They are adjudicated by attorneys who are former attorneys. Judges are former attorneys, and this process is all made up in works for the benefit of attorneys. They get paid whether there's a good outcome or a bad outcome. There is no accountability for the courts, and there's no accountability for the attorneys. So, but we've allowed this to happen, so we can't blame it on them. If you could create that in your profession, that you had no accountability and you got paid all the time, wouldn't you do it? I think just by human nature, we would. And he says many court officials are too defensive when reports of the harm courts are doing to children surface. Absolutely true. Where's all the stories, and where's the call for accountability by the courts and the people, excuse me, the people who have allowed this to go through and go on. And lastly, he says children don't seem to have any influence in promoting needed reforms. The children speak in the research and in the pictures of their dead brothers and sisters, and I think it's time we listen. I agree with this on the premise that children need to be protected. And so there you have it. That's this article. I hope that you got some. I went on and ranted much longer than I thought I would about this, but it's important. One, the false narrative of you are bad and that men are the only abusers in the world, particularly in domestic violence cases and in the demise of marriages, is a load of crap. So don't believe that narrative. You may run into it in your family law court, but fight against it. Also, the narrative that that men not being the primary attachment parent don't have as equal, if not more, impact on their children's lives. That is complete crap. This is statistically and research-driven fact that you have as much, if not more, a greater influence on the future of your children by being involved and having regular involvement in their lives. So if you in your heart know and feel you need to be involved in your children's lives, absolutely, positively fight for this. The other point about the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences. So there's a high probability we've gone through one or more of those, and that's led to our maladaptive behaviors that have led to the demise of our relationships and our divorce. So you may relate to this and understand this. And so we need to stop this. We don't want to perpetuate this with our children. Sometimes that's with us working out our own stuff, right? And not putting it on our kids. Sometimes it's fighting for our kids and making sure that an unhealthy co-parent, an unhealthy ex is not influencing them in an adverse manner and putting their stuff on them so that they're going to have more challenges in their adult life. And then lastly, excuse me, I think we can all agree that by doing that and by fighting in the court system, as exhausting as it may be for you as a father, that it is going to create a better future for our children. We stop it now, they grow up healthy, they have healthy relationships, they have children, in turn that it compounds upon itself by being able to stop this. Normalizing all of these narratives, perpetuating these narratives is wrong, and it's only doing harm and detriment to our children. So keep up the fight. I know a lot of you listening are going through it. I can appreciate it. I empathize with you. We have a ton of men listening. We have a ton of men weekly in the Dad's Meetup that are going through it, and we're talking about it. And this is part of the Divorce Dadvocates mission, is to get out there and not only raise awareness to it, but create support for you. So on that note, I'm gonna finish up with the offer that I wanted to make to each of you for this 6-week Dad's Divorce Blueprint. If you really want to figure out a way to create a healthier, less traumatic divorce process for you and your children, this is the course for you. I went through all the specifics of it at the beginning of the show. If you will click in and you will spend a half hour with me, I'm going to have a significantly discounted, like way ridiculously discounted offer for you. If you'll spend a half hour talking with me about what you've got going on, and we can talk about that, and then we can get you into this course, which is going to bring you alongside all the other men that are going to be involved with it and in the community, and it's going to help you through this process. I promise you, it is absolutely life-changing opportunity for you to get involved with this, and it's going to only compound the more men we get involved. So click on that link before, get in my calendar. It's just going to sync up automatically. We're going to spend about 30 minutes talking, and we'll work through these things, and we'll get you involved in the community, and we'll all work through this together and help each other and more men as more of this snowballs. Finally, wow, I feel like I just talked like some of those show hosts that talk so fast that I go, can't you slow down? Usually they're too slow, and I've got to go to about 1.5 speed because I can't sit and listen to how slow they are. But some of them go so fast, I wish there was a slow down button. And I feel like I was one of those guys today. So anyway, sorry if I was so worked up and talking so fast today. That's what happens when I get riled. So lastly, if you found some value, excuse me, please make a comment in whatever platform you're on. Give us a star rating. Go to the Facebook page and like us. Go to the YouTube page and subscribe, and just get the word out there. Share some of the podcasts with your friends. Put that on your social media, on your LinkedIn, on your Facebook, on your YouTube, on whatever platform you are. The more that we're sharing this, the better. We're getting thousands and thousands of people listening now. We've got hundreds of downloads every single week, which less than a year ago we were at 0, right? So we're coming up on 1-year anniversary. Sincerely appreciate all of your help. Everything that you're doing, all the sharing that you're doing, all the work that you're doing is helping us drive this to more and more men out there, and it's helping more and more men. So I sincerely appreciate that, and have a great week, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Take care.